So here are the official patch notes for Overwatch 2. 30% knockback resistance and 30% lower ultimate generation from damage taken. 30% knockback resistance means basically they will be booped less far by all sorts of things. 30% lower ultimate generation means that farming tanks is now much less viable from both supports healing their own tanks or from you spamming opponent tanks. Damage, 10% faster movement speed, fairly self-explanatory. Support, regenerate 15 health per second after 1 second without being damaged. Now what's interesting here is that initially in the alpha they had it at 10 health per second after 1 second, if I'm not mistaken. So they bumped that up a little bit. So supports now regenerate their HP pretty quickly and at a pretty decent rate as well. Temporary shield and armor health pools have been combined into overhealth with no special attributes. So any additional shielding and armor you get is not going to have any special attributes. So this applies most prominently to rally. It will no longer reduce further damage than what it already is supposed to. And overhealth no longer provides ultimate charge when damaged. So any additional health you get, so for example, if you're a Sigma and you suck, or if you're a Lucio and you beat or anything like that, none of that will provide ultimate charge when damaged. Base armor health pools reduce incoming damage by 30% and no longer mitigate damage by the previous flat amount of -5 damage per hit. So again, this is really big, guys. This is why tanks are going to feel so much more survivable in Overwatch 2, because they're flat out reducing all damage incoming by 30%. So this is a big change. This is a big change. Armor reduction now applies equally to all sources of damage, including damage over time effects and beams. So again, very important. Everything is included in this. Phase effects no longer clear Zarya's Graviton Surge or Sigma Gravitic Flux movement restriction effects. For example, Reaper can still use Wraith form while in Graviton Surge to prevent damage, but he can't walk out of it. Mei's Cryo Freeze no longer removes Sigma's Gravitic Flux effect, so she can no longer escape it with the Cryo Freeze. And Sombra Hack effect is now removed by phase effects. Base health increased from 250 to 450. Rising Uppercut ability removed. This has been replaced by Power Block. New ability 2. Enter a blocking stance, reducing damage taken from the front by 90%. Blocking at least 100 damage causes Doomfist's Gauntlet to become supercharged, empowering the next rocket punch in the following ways. Increases damage by 50%, travels 50% faster and further. The area of effect blast that knocks back additional targets is twice as large. Targets impacting a wall will be stunned for additional 0.5 to 1 seconds, depending on the charge amount. Hand cannon damage reduced from 6 to 5 per pellet. Ammo regeneration rate increased from once every 0.6 to once every 0.4 seconds. Rocket punch. Impact damage range reduced to 50 to 30 damage. Wall slam damage range reduced from 50 to 150 to 20 to 40 damage. Maximum charge uptime reduced from 1.4 to 1 seconds. Impacting a target now causes a secondary larger cone area check to grab extra targets to potentially knock them back as well. So to summarize, basically the punch does less damage, but you can punch multiple people. Seismic Slam has now been moved from ability 2 to ability 1, so this will be a little bit confusing. You may want to rebind your Doomfist keys. Now launches Doomfist into the air in the direction the player is aiming, so very similar to a Winston leap. Creates a wide arc shockwave upon landing, dealing 50 damage and slowing enemy movement speed by 30%. No longer has different behavior between being activated in the air or on the ground, so you can basically do this whenever. No longer pulls in enemies and can be cancelled by pressing the ability again, so you can cancel your slam, leading to some interesting Doomfist tech. Meteor Strike, basically the damage range is reduced, so less damage potentially. The impact right at the center is unchanged though, so if you land right on top of someone, it's the same amount of damage. The knockback is removed and instead additionally slows the movement speed of all enemies hit by 50% for 2 seconds. And the cast time is reduced, so some of you who were dying in the cast time of the Meteor Strike will no longer hopefully be dying. Base health increased from 300 to 450, and base armor reduced from 300 to 200. Primary fire movement penalty reduced from 50 to 40%. Weapon spread reduced from 4 to 3. Thanks to years of combat and Ifi Oladele's tireless work, Orisa's mind and abilities have evolved. She has fully grown into her role as the defender of Numbani. Base armor increased from 200 to 250 and base health increased, so chunkier Orisa. New primary fire now rapidly fires 10 plasma projectiles per second. Projectiles start out large and shrink as they travel. Damage starts at 10.5 and scales down to 4 damage over 35 meters, and uses a heat mechanic instead of ammo. So firing the weapon increases heat and it cools down while not firing. If the weapon overheats, a forced release of heat prevents the weapon from being fired for 3 seconds. Energy Javelin, new secondary fire. Orisa throws a spear forward, impacting the first enemy in its path, dealing 80 damage. Stuns enemies for 0.2 seconds and knocks them back 6 meters. If the enemy collides with a wall while being knocked back, they take 40 more damage and are stunned an additional 0.3 seconds. Fortify now slows Orisa's movement speed by 20% while active, and provides 125 extra health while active. Reduces the heat generation from Orisa's weapon by 50% while active, and the duration has been increased slightly from 4 to 4.5 seconds. New ability 2, Javelin Spin replaces her shield. Orisa rapidly spins her spear for 1.75 seconds, destroying incoming projectiles. It increases her forward movement speed by 60% while active, and by 20% for 2 seconds after the spinning ends. So, speedy gal Orisa. Rapidly damages enemies in her path, dealing up to 90 damage and constantly knocking them back. So it constantly keeps pushing them further and further back. Terra Surge. So this replaces Orisa's supercharger. New ultimate ability. Orisa pulls in nearby enemies and becomes fortified, charging up an area of effect attack over 4 seconds. Releasing the charge deals up to 225 damage based on how long it was channeled. So if you spend the 4 seconds channeling it, that's a lot of damage that you're going to do. While charging deals minor damage over time and slows nearby enemies by 30%. Base armor increase from 200 to 300, so that is a big armor buff. If armor reduces incoming damage by 30%, then the 100 is basically reducing an extra 30%, so 130 effectively, right? And his base health is increased from 300 to 350. Ryan looking tired AF. Wouldn't you be if you had to spend 4 years getting pounded with no reward? Steadfast removed and replaced by the tank passive. So the tank passive already does what Steadfast used to. Barrier field health reduced from 1600 to 1200, and the regeneration rate reduced from 200 to 144 health per second, reducing the propensity of shields in the game. Charge. Steering turn rate increased by 50. Can now be manually cancelled, so it should make charge a lot more flexible of an ability. Charge pinwall impact damage reduced from 300 to 225. So for most characters that shouldn't make a difference, but for just a few characters who are on that 250 threshold, they will survive the pin. Cooldown from 10 to 8 seconds, so again you can charge more often as well. Fire Strike now has 2 charges as they've shown a long time ago, but the damage has been reduced from 100 to 90, so slight damage reduction. And one thing to bear in mind is that this is going to change certain breakpoints. So if you shoot a Fire Strike through a window, you're no longer going to one-tap most squishies, so just bear that in mind. Not many changes. Base health increased from 600 to 700, and his breather now heals instead of 300, 350. Base shields increased from 100 to 200. Accretion damage increased from 70 to 100, and the barrier regeneration rate reduced from 120 to 100. So a little bit more personal shields, but his shields when broken will regenerate a little bit more slowly, just in line with shields being a little bit less of a thing, well, a lot less of a thing in Overwatch 2. Base armor increased from 150 to 200, so a bit more of a buff for my boy. Tesla Cannon now has a secondary fire. Hold secondary fire to charge, release to fire a 30-meter range jolt of electricity. Deals up to 50 damage and costs up to 20 ammo, depending on how long you hold it. Barrier Projector. Barrier Projector health increased from 650 to 800. Barrier Projector duration reduced from 9 to 8 seconds, and the cooldown reduced from 13 to 12 seconds. It lasts a little bit less longer in terms of timing out, but it's got more health and comes up quicker, so buff to Winston's barrier. The only one who's really getting a buff to the barrier, but I think fair enough, he might need it. Primal Rage, ultimate cost increased by 10%. It's going to take him a little bit longer to get Primal. Base armor increased from 100 to 150. Base health increased from 500 to 550. So a little bit more sustain in his natural health. Adaptive shield radius increased from 8 to 10 meters. So how far away you can increase your, or how far away you can gain shielding from when you use adaptive shield based off of the enemies that you target is a little bit bigger. Health gain per target increased from 75 to 100. So basically trying to help Wrecking Ball's sustainability. Base health increased from 200 to 250. Base shields increased from 200 to 225. Particle barrier now has a 10-second cooldown on a shared 2-charge system with projected barrier. Cooldown now begins immediately on ability use instead of when the barrier has expired, and the barrier's duration increased from 2 to 2.5 seconds. Basically, both her bubbles are on the same cooldown now, whether she gives it to an ally or to herself. Energy degeneration increased from 1.8 to 2.2 per second. So basically she's going to lose her energy a little bit faster, just to try and control how long she can stay on high energy, especially considering she can bubble herself twice now, which is very lethal. Very small change. Bob base health reduced from 1200 to 1000. So Bob will do a little bit less of something. Self-repair, ability removed and replaced by A36 Tactical Grenade. A36 Tactical Grenade. New secondary fire. Launches a grenade that can bounce off walls but sticks to players or the ground. It explodes after a short delay, dealing up to 130 damage, which is a lot. And also, he can use this to do some parkour. So like a Helix rocket, he can use this to knock himself up into certain positions. Configuration Tank Ultimate has been removed and replaced by Configuration Artillery. Configuration Artillery locks Bastion into place to fire up to 3 long-range artillery shells. These shells deal high damage in a large area, but the damage fall-off is significant. The projectiles come straight down from the air at the target locations, but they are projectiles in every other sense and can be blocked or destroyed by abilities. So if you want to do some heroics with your shields, with your deflect, it can all be done if you aim up at the sky. Recon. Weapon damage increased from 20 to 25. The fire rate is reduced, however. The weapon spread is removed, and the ammo cost is reduced from 35 to 25. Configuration Assault. Renamed from Configuration Sentry. Bastion is now able to move in this form at 35% reduced movement speed. So you're going to see some terrorizing Bastions moving around corners. Now has a 6-second duration and a 12-second cooldown. Now has infinite ammo for its duration. Weapon spread is now a constant 2 degrees and no longer becomes more accurate as you fire. Damage reduced from 15 to 12. Flashbang removed and replaced by Magnetic Grenade. Magnetic Grenade throws a grenade that can stick to enemies, automatically homes in on an enemy close to the reticle when thrown within 10 meters of the target, and can chase up to 13 meters. Deals 131 damage split between 1 impact damage, 65 explosion damage, and an additional 65 damage to the stuck target at the time of detonation. Peacekeeper secondary fire Fan the Hammer. Fire rate increased by around 7.5%. Not sure why. I'm not sure what the reason for this is, but he's going to be fanning the hammer. At least he can't flash fan. Deadeye now grants 40% damage reduction while channeling the ultimate. Damage now builds at 130 damage per second for the first 2 seconds, and then 260 damage per second for the remaining duration. Maximum duration increased from 6 to 7 seconds, and the ultimate cost increased by 10%. Deadeye a bit scarier now because he can actually tank a lot of stuff. Focusing Beam. Maximum damage per second reduced from 200 to 175. So just a slight nerf. Now, this is really impactful. Echo copies the target's combined health value, including health, armor, and shields, up to a 300 total health. So, e.g., a duplicated Tracer will have 150 health, and a Reinhardt will have 300 health maximum. There's a cap on Echo duping tanks, basically. It can't be as powerful as it currently is. Storm Arrow's damage reduced from 70 to 65. Thank the Lord. Something. Steel Trap no longer prevents all movements for its target, now slows its target by 65% until they reach its max chain length and then it breaks. Still prevents movement abilities from being activated. Damage increased from 80 to 100, and the projectile speed is increased from 10 to 17. It's a bit more fluid, a bit more mobile. You can throw it more actively in combat. Does a little bit more damage, but doesn't stop people. Just kind of halts their momentum, and then it breaks. Endothermic Blaster. Freeze stun removed, so you will no longer be getting frozen by Mei. Immediately slows targets by a constant 50% instead of building up over time. The slow duration reduced from 1 to 0.5 seconds. The damage per second is increased from 55 to 100. And the ammo is increased from 120 to 150. Cryo Freeze no longer removes Sigma's gravitic flux effect, so she can no longer dodge the flux with her cryo block. Ice Wall. Pillar health reduced from 400 to 250. And the range is reduced from 35 to 20. So basically, with Ice Wall acting like a kind of budget shield, this is now nerfing that in the way that we've nerfed most shields. Not many changes. Damage per pellet reduced from 6 to 5.4, and the spread is increased from 6 to 8. He was a bit strong in the early alpha. They've nerfed him a little bit, so my boy's suffering. Railgun, a rapid firing projectile that generates energy on hit. Railgun Alt Fire, high impact shot that consumes stored energy. Think of the energy building the way a Zarya energy works. Disruptor Shot, launches an energy burst that snares and deals damage to enemies within it. Power Glide, ground slide that can cancel into a high jump. And Overclock, ultimate ability. Railgun energy auto charges for a short duration, and shots pierce enemies. Machine Pistol, damage reduced from 8 to 7, spread reduced by 10%. So a little bit less damage, but a little bit less spread. So rewards a bit more accuracy. Hack, the cooldown reduced from 8 to 4 seconds, but the cooldown is no longer reduced when hacking health packs. Cast time increased from 0.65 to 0.85 seconds. However, you can hack from when you're invis. Health pack hack duration reduced from 60 to 30 seconds. Ability lock duration reduced from 5 to 1 second. So only 1 second now will the person who's hacked not be able to use their abilities. Reveals hacked enemies through walls to Sombra's team for 8 seconds. Very important to note. So the cooldown is 4 seconds. Essentially, you can hack 2 people at any given time and have them wall hacked for your team. Interrupting hack during the channel time now incurs the full cooldown. So if you mess up, you're gonna have to wait for the 4 full seconds. Stun duration on Bob reduced from 5 to 2 seconds, so she no longer hard counters Bob. Now destroys Baptiste immortality field when it is hacked. So just a nice counter to Immo now. Stealth, fade in time reduced by 50%, so you go into the stealth faster. Enemy detection radius increased from 2 to 4 meters, so enemies will see you. That little detected thing will happen from further away. And can now use hack during stealth without ending stealth ability, but is revealed to enemies while hacking and for 0.75 seconds after hacking. So even if you do hack someone while invis, they will be able to see you for a little bit. Damage dealt to hack targets is now increased by 40%. You are going to pound these hack targets. EMP, in addition to hacking them, now also deals 40% of current health as damage to enemies. So this is no longer going to strip shields or anything like that. It just does a flat 40% damage. No longer deals additional damage to base shield health hero pools. EMP still deals massive damage to barriers. Pulse Pistols damage reduced from 6 to 5, so slight nerf. Widowmaker, base health increased from 175 to 200, so stronger Widowmaker. Sleep Dart cooldown for Ana increased from 12 to 15 seconds, which personally I think is a little bit much. Biotic Launcher primary fire minimum fall off range reduced from 25 to 20 meters, so he'll be less effective at range. Regenerative Burst, total healing increased from 75 to 100 health, so he can look after himself a little bit better. Shield Bash no longer stuns enemies. Cooldown reduced from 7 to 5 seconds. Distance travel increased from 7 to 12 meters. Movement is no longer stopped when impacting barriers. And the damage increased from 1 to 50. And also, it will now trigger the Inspire when shield bashing. Lucio, sound barrier ultimate cost reduced by 12%. now increase the support passive healing by 50%. So while normal supports heal for 15 healing per second, Mercy will heal for around 22.5. If you're chasing a Mercy and she's guardian angeling around and you don't start killing her quickly, or you don't keep poking her, she's gonna be juicing up. She's gonna be juicing up. And remember that when she pops Valk, she heals. Her passive is basically active all the time. So in Valk, she's gonna be healing 22.5 HP per second.